I see people joining. So hello, everyone. Alex Şahin here, CMO at Prophy. I'm delighted to welcome you to today's discussion with two remarkable voices in scholarly publishing. First one is Oleg Ruchayskiy. He brings his unique perspective as both Prophy, CEO, and professor at Niels Bohr Institute, while Ali Şahin shares deep insights from his work and AVES as general manager at AVES Publishing. Together, they'll explore how we can strengthen peer review in the era of rapid technology and advancements. Please feel free to share your questions, these thoughts in the chat in Zoom, and looking forward for meaningful exchange and insights. Over to you, Oleg and Ali.
Thank you very much, Alex. So let me probably start with a few words. So as Alex said, I'm a scientist and have been a scientist for all my kind of adult life, working in the area of particle physics and cosmology, and also a founder of a company which exists on the market for already 7 years now, called Prophy, company which mostly does finding experts and peer reviewers for funding agencies and for the scientific publishers. Ali, just the floor to you.
Thank you, Oleg, and thank you, Alex. My name is Ali Şahin. I am the general manager of AVES or AVES, and I'm not a scientist like Oleg, but I'm a publisher, and I've been doing this for close to 15 years now. I'm also a council member at European Association of Science Editors, AVES as short, and I would suggest everyone to take a look at AVES just after this webinar, maybe become members. And I wanted to firstly thank Prophy for collaborating on this webinar. I'm sure it's going to be interesting for our audience, who are mostly, I've just took a quick look, they're mostly journal editors. I know some of them. And I'm again sure most of them are struggling with their peer review processes. And I think they're sometimes struggling with the quality of the peer reviews they receive, if they ever receive it. Maybe we can start with that, Oleg. What do you think? How do we define quality, and how do we help improve it with journals or the peer reviewers?
Yes, thank you, Ali. A very good question. So to begin with, why I started doing all this many years ago, it was my understanding at some moment that maybe the biggest contribution to science I could make in my scientific career is actually doing something like Prophy, making the whole publishing process more straightforward, more efficient, and more tuned toward the actual spirit of science, namely to the kind of collaborative nature. Why I would start to speak about this now? Because that's probably what the quality in the peer review in the first-hand means. What I would, as a scientist, the person who receives the peer review, the person who is actually currently writing a response to like a set of peer reviews to one of our papers, what I value the most is kind of a collaborative and constructive approach to the publication. When the people come to you with suggestions, when the people come to you not only with criticism or even praise, but when they say, okay, this you did well, but here I'm not sure, I would check this and this and this because I think this is important. And that's what essentially helps us to kind of continue. I mean, it's called peer review because it's a peer-to-peer process. You and me are both on the same field. We are both interested in the outcome of this, that truth kind of being discovered, scientific truth is being discovered, and that's why I'm helping you, if I'm a reviewer and you're an author, to do this work. And when we thought about this, and as I said, like me and my co-founders, we thought that this could be one of the most important contributions we can do to the field of science. We started to think, okay, how do we approach this? It's a very broad desire, right? And it has many facets, and we may touch on some of them. But we essentially started from if you wish, as simple as the first step towards this, which became a company at the end, namely, how do I find people who have expertise on a given paper? Because this is a necessary but not sufficient condition for the good peer review. The person should really understand what the manuscript is about. And in the funding agencies, as a side note, for the funding agency, situation may be slightly different because sometimes people may not need to know the methodology of the process, but they may reflect on the general relevance of this, especially when it's a multidisciplinary grant application. There you may imagine a situation when the person is not an expert, but has a broad view on the field and can tell which questions are actually important to address. Not that much in the scientific publishing, where we actually speak not about future research, but about past research. We want to report our results, and the peer reviewers want to make sure it is correct. And that's, as I said, the step number 0, the necessary condition, by no means sufficient condition, is the person whom we are suggesting an expert. And this is essentially what Prophy does. At some moment of time when we will kind of share our views, I will be happy to show to you a generic kind of how Prophy works, and it will give you an idea how we are tackling this problem. But essentially, like to put it in a very few words, we build an expertise profile of every scientist who ever published a manuscript. It's 82 million people actually in our database, and we can measure this expertise in some kind of machine processable form, and we can match it to the expertise to the content of the paper. And this is how our expert suggestions appear, again, as a very simple terms. So, Ali, for me, as an author, first of all, does the review contributes to improve my paper? First of all, in terms of its kind of quality, checking assumptions, checking methodology, reflecting on the results, etc., suggesting ways for improvement.
And I think that actually aligns with the quality standards of the journals, because there are a few points of this publication process. You have the reviewers who are researchers, and you have the authors who are also researchers, and those peers are working together to present a study. And at the other end, there's a journal who will act as a medium to present that study to the larger researcher audience. And for the journalist, it's also sometimes it's the touches that make the article more visible among thousands and tens and hundreds and thousands of similar research. And I think it's important for journals to have the constructive and cooperative approach of the reviewers in improving their content. But how do you think convey a journal's quality standards to the potential reviewers, the people who we invite? Because, as you said, Prophy acts as a tool where it helps the editors actually find the correct people to improve that study, but which they have been doing for. We were just discussing this. They have been doing that for hundreds of years, but it looks maybe deeper. Your product helps them look deeper, or in a more broad way, or sometimes in a more detailed way. How do we, when we find those people, how do we convey our message to the peer reviewers, our expectations, and yeah, it's back to you.
Well, yes, and again, thank you. It's a very good question, right? One of the things which I think is not sufficiently present right now in the kind of publishing world, again, judging from me as the receiving end of this, when I'm being invited to peer review into my topical journals, is the explanation, some very broad, why I was selected. I usually can understand that, again, because I'm reviewing for specific topical journals, I usually can understand why I was chosen by the editor. But probably, and I think that goes across the fields and across the domains, it would be important for me as a potential peer reviewer to understand, why did you select me? Which of my works actually triggered your interest in this subject, right? I mean, in the ideal world, we would like to do it in such a way that, okay, here's the paper which challenges my results, so I probably should have a say about what this paper is doing. And of course, that's a very narrow range of publications which directly come into confrontation with the previously published works. We know that most of the works they're just adding something on top. So
how would that change in your approach to that paper, knowing which paper was triggered that invitation?
Well, I mean, I think it's not surprising for you. And again, I am sharing my opinion of editors with whom I had communicated through the course of my career as scientist and as a Prophy founder. And you are welcome to suggest your own perspective. So I'm not talking to the audience and to you, Ali, in particular, right? But for me, not all my papers are created equal. And some of them I value more, some of them I value less. Some of them I understand that they have been broadly known and create for me certain kind of reputation. I mean, in my community, but some of them may be something which I don't think about very high, over tangential for me as in my research. Because sometimes we join groups and contribute to the papers in an insignificant way or less significant way. Let's be not so modest. So for me, of course, those where as my key expertise, I would be very much interested to contribute. That again brings us back to this Prophy technology, which tries to match the experts. I mean, second thing, which is kind of I think important for me, is if a reviewer's invitation puts this in perspective, right? For example, if somebody comes to me and says, "Look, this paper heavily relies on your works, so we think that you are a good expert because of that." I would say, okay, let's see why is this. So this paper is probably a follow-up to one of my works or development of one of my works, which makes sense for me to look at this and review it, right? Because then I'm naturally an expert to this. So, and that's one of the things again which we at Prophy can trace. And then, as I said, this helps out as far as I can see from our customers. This helps to engage people. There is also a completely different dimension. I don't want to talk about this now, or maybe at the later stage, is we understand that people are more eager to do their reviewing work when they're young, in the scientific sense, when they're junior scientists, rather than when they become seniors and have a lot of responsibilities and they're usually not very well managing their time and have essentially, it's basically overloaded. So on the other hand, the younger people have less expertise. So that's kind of probably another thing. I think that you are expert enough to do this review. It's a sign of appreciation from you editors who are representing a community in this case, to me as the potential peer reviewer. You are young, but your research record in this particular field looks promising. That's why we are engaging you.
And how can journals, so at this point we are looking for quality reviewers, and we have identified the candidates, and we have invited them, and we have somehow indicated our quality standards to those potential reviewers, and we expect them to provide us with a review that improves what we have at hand. But what can journals do to help the reviewers? Because as you said, we will have the junior researchers, we will have the senior researchers who has done probably hundreds, sometimes thousands of reviews. How do we make sure that we get an acceptable average out of all these people that consistently helps our content in peer review, our articles, our research in peer review?
What I will say now is maybe it's definitely not a kind of commonplace. It's not a well-accepted point of view. So view it as one of my visions and our kind of ideas to move forward. And it may even be controversial. So kind of please bear with me. I mean, I say that it would be great. I mean, today we all speak that peer reviewers are done completely silently. Peer reviewers are not rewarded. There is no recognition, no reward for this. And that's all very true. It's also true that they are not accountable. So whatever I write in the peer review will not be held accountable for. In the worst case scenario, the editors will decide that I'm a very bad reviewer, will never invite me again. Itself is not a punishment, as you understand. So what I would imagine is something like, I don't know, a trust pilot, so the website where you as an editor can leave a 1, 2, 3, 5 stars for me as a reviewer. I mean, of course, not on the trust pilot per se. And there are a lot of questions how to be done, who should be doing this. But of course, this would matter a lot, right? Because submitting a poor quality peer review and receiving 2 stars from a journal would be very not only bad, maybe not even bad for reputation, although we may also argue about this, but very kind of frustrating, right? I mean, we know that all the big aggregators where this is doing, of course, these rankings play a lot of role. People try to make sure that a receiving side or giving side perceives each other correctly. So I was always wondering, I never actually heard a definitive answer, so let me ask you about this and maybe the audience as well. Do journals keep kind of a blacklist, something like this person never invited? Because of whatever reasons, they never deliver, or they deliver poor quality report, or they are...
I think it depends. It depends on the institutional memory of that journal. If you have a journal editorial board that's been managing that journal for years and years, I think in some cases they'll have written or written protocols established where they identify and somehow eliminate those people. It will be some journals will use their rating system that is on their submission system. Some journals will eliminate that reviewer immediately. They'll revoke their reviewer account. They can only submit papers to that journal. But I would say, let's say 99% of the time, there is no such thing. One editor will hate that reviewer and will do nothing about it, and the next editor will see that person as available and invite them to review again. So I think at least in my experience, in most cases, there is not, and the institutional learning thing does not happen. And they just keep dealing with it without knowing that each individual is dealing with the same person.
Thank you for this sharing, because it kind of coincides with my expectations. But as I said, I didn't know about this because I has never been an editor. That's one of my scientific kind of missions of my scientific career.
You should try it. I hear it's fun.
Yes, but what I wanted to say is that although I started with the fact that we at Prophy use only the expert component, expert side of the people to match manuscripts to reviewers, we are now moving more in the community direction, when we would try to gather some kind of social information about this. For example, we may try to gather this ranking internally. We may don't need to share it, so make it public, etc. But if a journal consistently gives thumb down to a reviewer or 1 star, let's say, then someone would stop suggesting these people. So it will be our internal kind of bookkeeping system. Of course, my ambition and dream would be to make this, as I said, like a central hub where everybody can contribute and everybody can benefit from this. This will be kind of our direction for the future development and future.
But we are looking at it from one end of this assessment where we identify the black sheep, but we have stars who are doing really good work then they will be bombarded with invitations, which they already probably, without them having a public profile, they already receive more invitations than they can handle. But if we have a system where we display that publicly, it may sometimes overwhelm the high performers. What do you think?
Ooh. And yes, I fully agree. And that's why it would be important for a company like Prophy or in position of Prophy, which works with many publishers, and we do work with many publishers, and which process many manuscripts, because not only we would know that this person has 5 stars and is generically a very good reviewer, we would also know their kind of engagement rate. So like they don't receive invitation more often than once every 2 months, let's say, which is like 6 per year, which is a lot, but doable. Or even going one step further, I would like to see a situation when the people would say for which journals they would agree to review. And then, of course, if you are a 5-star reviewer, we would offer to you invitation to review for the most prestigious journals, right? Because that's
Yeah.
also more rewarding, right? The more challenging and cutting-edge work you are reviewing, the more rewarding this work is just by itself as a scientific curiosity. You essentially touch something which is just being born. That's very interesting and very challenging. He puts a lot of emphasis on this. So what I'm trying to say, creating such a hub, which again starts, as I said, like if quality starts from expertise finding, then the next step is kind of evaluation, both in terms of their availability and in terms of their acceptance, in terms of their quality of people. That would be kind of a next step. That's what we are entering into this phase we are entering right now. Like as we speak, we are discussing with our customers exchange of this information, again, so far in the siloed customer-related accounts, but this would move us in this given position. Of course, we have ambition to become a central hub for this, which would be beneficial for everybody because make their career and visibility there and manage the way they are loaded.
I think it can still, as you said, it will help researchers maybe better engage with high-level journals, but it can still help mid-level to emerging level journals where those journals are still trying to establish a core group of reviewers and they're still trying to establish the journal itself at some cases. And such a system could probably help the journal as well. If you allow me, I would like to take this conversation to the quantitative side of things and look at the speed of the reviews we receive. I think in most of our journals will have problems or struggles with finding reviewers, but in some cases they will, as I said, they will have their established number of reviewers who are already working with that journal, and they will always try to speed up the whole thing from submission to publication. It is very important, and it's probably one of the main areas we focus at all levels, the speed of the whole process. How do we reduce the turnaround times with reviewers? And we should at the same time not sacrifice the quality of the review we receive. Can Prophy help us with that? Or if not, is there any other tactics you would like to share on that?
Yes, I mean, that's of course a central question for the whole publishing industry. How can we do it quickly? And not only for publishing industry, but also for the author side. So, okay, my manuscript is somewhere in the depths of the journal for half a year. I don't know what's going on. I mean, I can hear this all the time about all kinds of journals, both big and small. And I have recently very positive and very negative experience with the journals of a completely different impact factor tiers, like those where you would think things should go like very smoothly, and those where you don't expect such a great quality of service, and actually things are contrary to your expectations. So like diversity is huge here. Probably this is a good place where I could very quickly demonstrate for you what Prophy is as an interface, as a standalone system. And this will help me to continue this discussion. Because, and so let me just share my screen. So, as Prophy exists is integrated in a number of manuscript managing systems, including manuscript manager, editor manager system, EGPress, in the near future Scholar One. But what I want to show you here is like I take and run the manuscripts as some open access document, and I just need its PDF, and again, this can be done through the API, but I will do it in a kind of as a standalone system, and I click upload, and I click choose a file, and select this PDF from my hard drive, and click upload. And at this moment, the processing happens, and not only the processing, but also matching of the authors. You will see in a moment why you need it. So found big bunch of authors, title, abstract, full text. And the first thing we do with this manuscript, once we figured it out, we annotate it. So that's a big document. What was this? 38 pages. And we annotated it with 400 scientific concepts. And when I say concepts, I don't mean keywords. And this is our annotation. So you can see that it's related to SARS-CoV, and you can see all kinds of very detailed scientific concepts which explain to you like SARS, and then SARS variants, and the Delta in particular, and SARS spike proteins, and live attenuated viruses, and attenuated vaccines, and then more general things like immunoglobulins, mDNA vaccines, and so on and so forth. All this together, kind of co-edited in a certain machine-readable way, creates for us a fingerprint of this particular document. And when I click Find Referees, this fingerprint goes into our database of this 82 million authors, and it matches those people. And those who match more than once go on top. And this is how this would look for you. So you would see the bunch of people, like top 50 by default. I can show you how this look like. This is number of their papers. We are taking top 10 by relevance, and this is their similarity with the work in question. So similarity 1 is the similarity of article with itself. So people with papers whose similarity range between 95 and something like 85% are in this list. And then a number of things which you can see here at a glance. And while I was speaking about quality, you can actually engage the time. It should take you under 5 minutes to find a reviewer. Namely, you see that all these people are relevant. You see why they are relevant. And this is their papers of relevance to a particular manuscript. These are not their most cited papers. This is not their most famous papers. These are papers most relevant to this manuscript. And you see also that this person, for example, has a conflict of interest because he had 3 common articles with some of the authors in the last 5 years. And you can see what was those articles and who was the person with whom he was working. So that's not a good reviewer. That's not a good reviewer. There are also people who would share not authorship, but affiliations. They would be marked differently, not here. Let's look at the author number 2, Rita Chen. You can see what she's working on. You can see her full profile, actually. That's automatically generated profile. It's Google Scholar-like style. So she has 97 papers, works in Washington and St. Louis, publishes some papers from Nature Medicine to clinical chemistry. You can see what she was working on in the recent years. When she works on COVID, and antibody, vaccines, it's clear that her profile is relevant. No wonder she's number 2. It's even for me, who's, again, a particle physicist. And by the way, you can also see, in this particular case, you don't, but usually you would also see her email. And there is a checkbox here to show only people with emails, but that's needed because then we can export it to you and you would be able to contact her. So you can also see that her work has been cited in this document several times. So you do know that this is a good expert on this particular manuscript. And you see how many articles she has written, what's her H index, what's her citations, and so on. Now that's kind of, so you can select her, and if there is an API integration between our system and your system, you click mark as referee, and then information about this person goes into your system.
And from there the system
Yes.
invites. But if we let's consider this scenario where again the journal is a mid-level journal or a journal that is being established, and we are aiming for the people who are not people with 150 H index, but they're looking at introducing more junior researchers as reviewers. How can they? Because I know this, I just want you to.
So for this and many other similar cases, we have a very wide set of selections. In particular, you can cap people by their H index, saying don't show to me people with H index less than 5, but don't also show to me people with H index less than more than 25. Again, you as editors usually know your audience, so you kind of understand your typical profile. Or you can cap it on article counts, or you can cap it on what we call the academic age. Number of years people have been publishing since the first publication, such. So a PhD student would have an academic age of 2-3, and the professor would have academic age, whatever, 10 plus, depending on the discipline. So this would be kind of postdocs of various kinds. And this allows you to select middle ground researchers, essentially.
Yeah.
Applying filters, you would be able to come to select a different group of people. So once I press it as it selected, and then again, the story goes like usual. And you as a journal know what your default selections are, like from which you would start. And this allows you, again, under 5 minutes to select 1 to as many people as you need. And then, of course, either connect to us through the API or to export it into your system through just the export button into a format of your choice. So
maybe some of the participants would like to know where the data is coming from, because that was one of my first questions, if you remember. Where does Prophy collect or get all
yeah, so I would be happy to answer this question, but just to illustrate it, that's right. Within for editor, it may take 5 to 10 minutes to select 1, 2, 3. Again, you can select 5 or 10 people and transfer them to your system. So this part of selection is sufficiently quick. I'm not showing this to you, but the database allows you to contain information about availability, acceptance rate, etc. It can actually take your own databases and merge it with the suggestions. It can, by default, propose for you reviewers who are also authors in your journal, which is definitely increases acceptance because people perceive this as part of their personal ecosystem, right? Their topic and their journal or journals, this may be several, is something which they would kind of consider worth investing their time and effort. So that's an important expertise dimension, and this is also kind of important thing to speed things up.
I think the interesting thing with that is, for example, I have a journal that's been using the same submission system for 15 years now, and I know they have close to 100,000 people on that system as authors, reviewers, whatever, editors, and the users, they get frozen at the time of their registration. Their data is never up to date. Maybe they've submitted a paper to that journal in 2015, and it's been years and years. They've done other research. Maybe they're stars now. They don't know. I think it's very useful. It could be very useful for journals with that type of database to actually make use of their own data as well.
Absolutely, yes. And we can overimpose our filters on top of a journal's database. So the people with high seniority will be filtered out when you, not removed, but filtered out when you select those filters, which I showed to you, and there are kind of many other combinations. So yeah, and this as well as like our filter of people which are coming from the journal, there can be also added a dimension of recency in the last, say, 2 years, last 5 years. And then this automatically only looks at the recent authors of this particular journal, or even publishers. This depends, of course, on the use case. So go ahead, Ali, and then I come back to the sources.
I think with the speed, again, I wanted to understand how we can balance the deadlines with our expectations. How do we how does communication help in that? And each reviewer will already receive dozens or hundreds of automated emails from the journals they have had a relationship throughout their career. How do we differentiate our journal or a journal in that inbox, in the inbox of that particular researcher? How do we communicate our needs better to those people?
Well, yeah, I can see the raised hand, so let me answer and then we'll receive the question. So, I mean, there is no magic bullet here, of course, right? And like there is this circle where respectful journals and predatory journals operate in the same field. And yes, every day in my spam filters, there's at least one invitation to review or to submit a paper to some completely unknown journal in a random discipline having nothing to do with what I'm involved in. And of course, this brings us kind of to the previous question of quality, right? How can I say to the reviewer why I selected them? Not just, okay, I bombard you because I bombard everybody with these messages. I think that you are a true expert on this manuscript because of this, this, and this. That's a message which I would probably read and appreciate. Of course, it also adds to the fact that if my journal will contact me, my desire to read this email is much higher than if it's a random journal which I never heard about, would just come to me and say, be our guest editor or be our reviewer, no matter what, right? So I think the relevance matters a lot. And these details which Prophy provides and which you can export into your system also matter a lot. The more topical and the more kind of pointed this invitation is, the more personalized it is, the more you feel kind of wanted and desired in the fiction. That's of course a big driver in your which influences your ability to respond positively.
I think our brains are now finely calibrated to detect automated emails. I don't think we think about it anymore. We, as soon as we see our inbox, we don't even need to look. We just eliminate those emails, and I think it always helps to keep a personal touch. To have, obviously we will always use our tools. We will use Prophy. We will use submission systems. We will use everything available to us. But at the end of the day, I think when you need a good review and when you need it fast, I think a call always helps. And or a personalized email directly from the editor, it always helps. I think sometimes the editors can mistake the tools that they use, and they can overly rely on them. I think yes, we should have the submission systems. We should have the tools that come with them and that integrate into them. But I think this process is between peers. I think there has to be the human element should not be forgotten. We should not just leave we should not just leave a submission with 30 invitations sent without just taking the time and trying to find ways to get people to get involved with that paper in question. And I think there should be other ways to in that to build a good reviewer base for each journal line. And I think each journal should aim to build strong relationships their reviewers, with the researchers around them. How can we do this? How do you think if can Prophy help the journals in those relationships, or the vision you have for the future of the product? Where do you see Prophy helping journals in establishing that trust, that strong relationship with the community around them?
It's a again, thank you. It's a good question, and it's an important question, right? We've been in conversation with some kind of journals which only start, they don't have big reputations, they don't have big kind of ranking, whatever, like Scopus or anything, and they would tell me, "Oh, we need to send 100 emails to get a single acceptance invitation." I said, "But wait, no, it cannot be that way, right? Let's work together. Let's discuss it. Let us help you." Not that by our product it will help you, but let us figure out what people would respond to your invitation, because there are definitely people who would review for your journal. So let's identify this, build their profile, configure the system, and then try to find them for you. Let us try them for you, because I'm sure not everyone who can respond positively to your journal's invitation is known to you. And the fact that you're sending 100 emails for a single response just means that you're not doing it correctly. You're just doing it en masse, not being personal, which may be the main key of this. And already now, just with carefully selecting your ideal reviewer or kind of your typical reviewer, we are able to improve the quality of acceptance significantly. And we have multiple cases of this with various publishers of ours. Of course, as I mentioned at the beginning, our ambition is to become a hub where the information from publishers, from individual reviewers would come together and would kind of meet each other, because both sides have expectations and desires, and to find a place which can try to balance it, preferably in a kind of sufficient automated way, so that like human biases would not be part of the game, would be our ambition. And I think it would be a situation where everybody will win, both kind of emotionally and lucratively, because it will be easier to run a business for you, it will be easier to run a business for us, and it will be easier to be a scientist and review things and get rewarded for those things, or recognized at least for those things. So that's our vision today and our goal for tomorrow.
And from a practical standpoint, I think journals should also think about what we've been talking about, what the reviewers can do for the journals, and the journals should also ask the questions what they can do for the reviewers. I think especially smaller journals, the newly established journals, they should look for people who can grow with that journal, maybe junior researchers who will help that journal improve, and in time they will become editors of that journal, again keep improving the same journal. I think journals can look for community members who can take the journey with them. I think that could be a good way to give back. Also, the editors, they're not aliens. They are also researchers. They have also reviewed papers, and in some cases they have vast knowledge in how to handle papers. I think the feedback of the feedback systems that they make use or establish to provide with the critique of those reviewers can also be valuable. How do you think that can improve that relationship, and what areas could journal editors focus on providing feedback to their reviewers?
Again, as I think that the first kind of step here is indeed to start to collect this information. As you say, even within the same journal, if there are kind of changes of editors, etc., this information about quality can get lost. And we would, of course, our kind of dream would be to have this information accumulated in our system and then try to leverage it. And of course, this will not be handled, I mean, just you as a publisher side and us as the kind of technology side will not be able to handle this question fully, right? We would have to kind of create certain momentum in the community, which needs it for many reasons, right? What is review recognition? It's a single place where you as a university, you as a publisher, you as a founder can go and see whether the person has previously reviewed for X, Y, Z. Today, this is all over the place, right? Personal CVs, OrgID profile. Some journals send you just to your mailbox certificates you have reviewed for this journal. Some journal give it upon request, and so on and so forth. So if I, as decision making who wants to reward scientists who do peer review, want to do it, it's not possible because there is no place where I can get this information. Even with all my will and even with all my resources, right? I have to do it like on a person by person basis, and that's of course unacceptable. So you know that there are kind of projects, and we are part of some of them, which try to combine reviewer suggestion with reviewer recognition, and this will be a big step in this direction. And I think this momentum is going. I mean, unfortunately, it has been kind of accelerated by the recent lawsuit going on right now in New York of kind of scientists against big publishers who claim that they are just exploiting them and kind of essentially stealing public money for private goods, which of course, I mean, that's a bad reason, but kind of the end of the day, this will force everybody to turn towards the review recognition in one way or another. So that's definitely something which we will see, I think, like within 2025 or so, we will just really see the change of momentum here. And even because this movement is now everywhere. And similar things are kind of coming from funders' side, from the university side, which are kind of employers of the scientists. I think the momentum here is positive. I would like it to be much faster than it is, but I believe it will happen. And this will be also beneficial for the publishers because it will make the peer review process more open and create this ecosystem done through Prophy, done through somebody else, which will allow you to see who are the reviewers. And this will also help with bad reviewers, because if everybody is on this peer review platform and you are not, then that feels bad, right? I mean, you're explicitly neglecting your community duties, which is kind of most of the people don't like to be this way.
I would like to just do a self-plug there. We've done another webinar on that New York lawsuit with the reviewer credits team. I believe they're a partner of yours. Our audience members can go to AVES's YouTube channel to see that past webinar, including this. This will also go on our YouTube channel, and Prophy will have this available on their channels as well. I'll have a final question or final key point to discuss. Then we can start going through the audience questions. In the meantime, our audience members can add any questions they have in the Q&A area down below. I think we have looked at the way we receive quality reviewers. We have looked at the way we receive those reviews quickly, and we have looked at our relationship with the reviewers. But is there a way? How does Prophy, or how do we balance the workload of reviewers, and how do we keep our journal editors aware of how much they ask from their reviewer community, and how do we respect their time? I think every single person we send these invitations to, they're probably very busy. They probably do those reviews at night or early in the day when they have very little going on. How do we keep respect in mind with those relationships?
It's a very good question, and I think it's again it's a direction which will see a lot of changes in the near future. And again, right now I'm not even speaking from the kind of profit standpoint, but as one of the technological companies working in the publishing sector. So I think that first of all, it would be an extremely interesting experiment, and like I would encourage everybody to perform it, is by just asking reviewer how many hours did they spend on the stream. I mean, as you say, we have very little idea, right? I mean, so maybe just in asking them, what was your timing? An hour, 20 minutes? I mean, no, probably nobody will say 20 minutes, right? But again, people tend to be more or less kind of honest about this, and it would give us idea of actually how much people are spending. And if you ask me, I don't even know what would be a respectable answer. Is it if I tell you that I reviewed the paper in 1 hour, does it mean that I was very superficial, or does it mean that I was very kind of detailed? Or if I told you that I spent 5 days on just reviewing the paper, unless I gave you like 20 pages, another paper as a peer review, would you believe me? Would you think it's adequate to do like so? I mean, surprisingly, there is no kind of guidance or expectation, explicit expectation about how much do you spend time on this. So, and what would you like if I honestly told you that it was like 3 hours? Would you think that I did a good job, or you'd say nobody can review normally 3 hours? So that, and actually, everybody like and said there are many editors in this call. So like, tell me your expectations. And that's thing number one. And then there is thing number two, which of course goes in hand with the recent technological advancements. Not every aspect of the paper is equally important. And there are many things which you as an editor can review, or which sometimes, I mean, I know sometimes receive reviews, say, okay, and then you have a typo here and improper English there. I mean, I really much appreciate this, but clearly spending the time of highly qualified people to type down to correct my type, to proofread my typos, it's, I mean, again, I'm thankful to them, but this is something which they shouldn't be doing, right? It should be done by whatever automated systems, Grammarly, LLM, OpenAI, whatever, some of the automated systems. So there are many other questions which are of, I would say, of a technical nature. And I really hope that within the next year or two, they'll start more and more to be tackled by technical tools. Think about language models, something even more simplistic, right? And this would, but probably it would enormously help to us as peer reviewers if editors would not just review the paper, but tell us something, for example. Is the research question important at all, right? Sometimes we are not sure what these people are studying. Like, is it really worth studying, or it's just complete empty curiosity? Or we understand everything about the research question. You don't have to tell us that this is important, but tell us that this methodology which they will be using. Do you think this methodology is adequate for this particular kind of research question? I receive sometimes a review where the reviewer says, I'm not an expert on the methodology, so I assume things are done correctly, but I can comment on statistical analysis or kind of subjects of the research. And that's, I think, a very valid answer. And this, I think, is a very valid question which editors may ask. So more focused questions would help reviewers to get a quicker answer. So it will help them to save the time. But of course, this question should be highly relevant for the editor, for them to make a decision about acceptance, rejection, etc. So that's apart from like all this AI technological advances which are coming, of course, and also to our industry. Like on a personal level, this is what I would consider as one of the main things to be done.
I think there's the answer there relied a little bit on AI, but that's a whole different webinar, and we would need to speculate a lot. And I think this has been one of the rare webinars these days that didn't have AI in the title. Yeah, I think there are a lot of questions around this. If the audience members are interested, they can always look at Again, AVES program, European Association of Science Editors. We have upcoming webinars and in fact our conference, next year's conference in Oslo. Maybe Prophy will be there as well. Let's talk about this, Oleg. In Oslo, we will discuss these further. Yeah, at this stage, I think we have a few minutes left where we can go through the questions. We have 3 questions so far, all from the same person, Dr. Erda, from Turkish Archives of Otorhinolaryngology. I think the first question we have, we discussed this briefly, but we can again go through that again. What measurable criteria can journals establish to define and assess the quality of peer reviews? And how can these standards be effectively communicated to the reviewers?
Well, if I would start, that would be exactly this previous point which we just discussed, right?
Yeah.
When you as an editor receive a paper, you have a criteria of what you publish. I mean, some journals publish everything, which is not wrong. Some the journals publish only the most cutting edge, bleeding, whatever research, right? And most of the journals are somewhere in between, but they have certain place and they should answer themselves, like what we prefer. Correct papers, but not very exciting, or exciting papers, but maybe sometimes speculative. What we value more? A cool idea, but kind of superficial realization, or more boring idea, but meticulously worked out things. And again, you don't have to say either or, but if you can ask your reviewer this specific question, one or another, and this depends on what will affect your acceptance, right? What will affect your confidence, what will drive your development of your journal. This will be very helpful to my mind. What do you think?
I think we don't, obviously we have to communicate levels of this to the reviewers, but I think each journal should have an internal workflow that is not constant, that is being updated and reviewed and improved and changed with their current needs. Maybe the journal has more papers than they can handle. Maybe like, for example, in 2020, they have all focused on COVID papers and they fast track them. I think that's a good example of an internal workflow where the editors and the editorial board and the journal team can change their criteria on the go. I think, yeah, we should obviously keep a way to display our expectations to the reviewers on the journal website or the submission system or the way we communicate the invitation letters. But I think having an internal workflow that is changing at all times is also important. Second question is, what strategies have proven most effective for journals in striking a balance between faster review processes and maintaining the depth and thoroughness of feedback provided to the authors?
Maybe this time you start and I'll kind of add something.
Yeah, I think again, it's the way you communicate with them. I think if you want to be fast, it feels like the same answer at all times. It's how you filter those papers, how you eliminate the ones that, because you have limited resources. The reviewers are limited resources for the journal. There are, in most cases, thousands, and each reviewer have a limited amount of time that they can dedicate to the journal. You should keep in mind that it is limited, and you should only, the journals should aim to make the most use out of them by only sending the relevant papers to the reviewers and just make life easier for the reviewers. And make sure that you present them a easy to read paper. It should not always be language edited, but at least have a system where you make sure the images in that paper are of good quality, or the references are somehow presented in an acceptable way, or even the submission system you use. If you are using an outdated 20-year-old submission system, maybe the reviewer will not want to work with you, or the other way around. If you are using some very new, not very user-friendly system, they may not want to just work with you. I think keeping the balance there is important. I think the way you keep the depth and thoroughness at a balance, kept at a balance, is, again, it's the task falls to the editorial board members. At a certain point, editorial board members can.
Oh, what happened? Is it my internet which is frozen?
No, no, it's everything is okay from your side. I see that we lost connection for a bit.
I'm back.
You're back, yes.
You're back.
Sorry. I wanted to say that editors can send reviews back to reviewers with feedback, and they can demand or ask the reviews to be improved in certain areas. I think all of those should be kept on the table. Oleg?
Yes, well, actually, I agree with you, and I think that this is very important, that this two-way communication will eventually help the reviewers to help it, and maybe they just should answer this in a kind of a staged way. Is this paper interesting? Yes. Are you an expert in methodology? Yes. Do you think it is correct? So it may be more like a set of more pointed questions adapted to the paper, not just a one questionnaire which fits to every manuscript which the journal can ever send out, which of course puts more load on the editor. I fully understand this, but it also would make a process much faster. Like on several occasions, just to give you an idea, I was invited not to review the paper, but to look at the peer review, author response, and kind of express my opinion, like with whom I agree, because the editor didn't have enough kind of expertise in this case to decide. And it was a discussion, a scientific one, of course, not the personal quarrel. So that's an example where the review was sufficiently quick. I read roughly the paper, one text, another text, looked at the points they were arguing about, and expressed my opinion. And that's, of course, much faster than just reading the whole paper and writing 3 pages of report. So pointedness of questions is probably the best of two worlds, both for the effectiveness and for the speed.
I think the last question is again a different webinar, but I'll just ask it still. What are the emerging trends in AI-driven or algorithm-based reviewer meshing systems, and how can journals address potential biases or limitations in these technologies?
So just last week, I have been in London for the STM meeting, where there was a big session where startups were presenting their new kind of approaches, half of them being in this area. And so what I would say, so there is a big trend, of course, of using AI and LLM systems for assistance to peer review, not only in terms of, so now they would be mostly be checking whether the paper contains all the necessary part, where if this paper which uses kind of clinical trials, do they include what various ethical statements, whether the data provenance is as mandated by the journal, etc. So all the technical but important parts which they do, so which would help essentially editors a lot. They also start to check things like, does the paper provide adequate references? Does it cite something which it shouldn't be citing? is it citing wrong references? Why it is citing something which is 20 years old rather than more modern reference to the same subject? So they start to try to analyze whether the state of the art is presented correctly, which is also a big thing because like many times you have to argue about this. So that's for example, this direction they are going. Again, they're trying to do what I just said in answering the previous question, commenting on Ali's answer. They are trying to provide a set of action points on which you as a human, editor or peer reviewer, have to react and give your answer. So biases, I mean, sometimes it's not, at the moment, it's not clear what will happen with the biases. I mean, you may argue that AI is unbiased, but of course it just has hidden biases given on what it was been trained. So we don't know how this will work, but it will definitely shift bias from like very few, sometimes very opinionated scientists to quite broad. And even if it's a bias in the AI, it's a very average bias across like huge domain of knowledge, which is probably, I would argue, not so obnoxious, if you wish. So I do expect that things will become better and that the synergy between humans who make decisions and machines which help them to kind of subordinate these decisions and facilitate, it may be proven a very, very efficient way, in particular in our field, and of course, in many others.
I worry that some of our editors already rely heavily on the automated emails and automated systems. Some you know, some editors may just leave the whole thing to the AI in the future, which worries me slightly, but we'll see. This was fun. Thank you, Oleg. We have no other questions. Alex, would you like to close this for us?
Yeah, thank you guys for this insightful meeting and sharing your point of views, all these, pretty valuable and really needed questions. I hope our viewers was satisfied by this webinar and have a nice evening or your time of the day. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye.